While we're fighting everyone, let's talk about status conditions. First of all, status conditions are basically things that will hinder the Pokemon afflicted by them in a certain way during battle. Now, there are two types of status conditions. Basically, we call them volatile and non-volatile. Volatile ones are the ones that don't persist through battles. Basically, if the battle ends, the condition is gone. You don't have to worry about it ever again. Well, unless you're inflicted with it again. And non-volatile are the ones that persist through battles. If you don't heal them, the next battle you engage on will also have the same status effects that you had before you entered the battle. Now, the division is pretty simple, so let's just get to each status condition. First, I'm gonna talk about the volatile ones. The first one being Bind. Oh boy, we have seen Bind a couple of times already throughout the series. And let me tell you, it's nasty. It's very nasty. Bind will last anywhere from 2 to 5 turns. The only moves that can give you Bind are Wrap, Bind, and Fire Spin. Each one will be its own type. Bind and Wrap are normal type, and Fire Spin is of course fire type. They do deal damage. The damage will be calculated by the power of the move, of course, and by the type interaction. So if your Pokemon is weak to fire, if you get afflicted with Fire Spin, then yeah, you're gonna have super effective damage. The damage dealt by any move that binds will be the same as the first damage. So if the first hit of Bind is critical, every hit after the first one will also have critical damage, even though it won't be shown as, oh, it's a critical hit. And the nasty thing about Bind is that it does not allow you to act until it wears off. So one thing that you can do is just get a really fast Pokemon like an Onix, at least in the beginning of the game. Onix is really fast, and then start spamming Bind. This way the Pokemon you're facing will never ever get you active, because you're always faster than it. So even after Bind wears off, you will still be faster than it, and then you're going to use Bind directly after that, so you're just gonna bind it forever. Switching out will stop it, however, so you know, there's that. But of course, if the opponent keeps using Bind, you're still in a huge mess. In Generation 2, thankfully, they changed the whole Bind thing to where instead of you can't act, you just can't switch out. It's a huge improvement. Next up is Leech Seed. First of all, this is the only volatile status condition that does not end after you switch out. So even if you switch out, your Pokemon will still be inflicted with Leech Seed. What Leech Seed does is that it deals 1/16 of your maximum HP as damage every single turn, and it will heal your opponent, whatever opponent that is, doesn't matter if it's the one that used the Leech Seed or not, that opponent will heal the same damage that you took. So if you took 10 HP of damage, your opponent will heal 10 HP. Grass types are not affected by Leech Seed, so there's that, that's a great plus, and that's about it. Next up we have Confusion. Confusion, when you're inflicted with Confusion, there's a 50% chance where instead of acting, you will actually damage yourself with a 40 power typeless move that can never be a critical hit. And it's also physical, meaning that it uses the attack and defense of the Pokemon, whatever that stat is at that moment. So if you raise your attack or had your defense lowered, that will mean that you will take more damage from Confusion. And of course, in the same way, if you raised your defense or somehow had your attack lowered, you will also take less damage from Confusion. It's 40 power, physical, and typeless, so it will never be super effective or not very effective. It will always be just effective, I guess. After 1 to 4 turns of acting, it will wear off. And it is the only condition that can be cured by items that heal everything. Only items that heal everything, like full heal or full restore. And if you switch out, it also wears off. The last volatile status condition is Flinch. Flinch is technically a status condition. We basically call it a one-turn status condition. What it does is that it stops the opponent from acting if the user was faster than the opponent. Flinch will only affect the turn when it was used. So if you moved second, you will never get your opponent to flinch, because what Flinch does is that it stops your opponent from acting on that very same turn. So if you moved second, your opponent has already acted. So why bother flinching if you have already done your thing? So yeah. The only way to make someone flinch is by using other moves that have flinch as a secondary effect, like Hyper Fang from Rattata and Raticate. And that wraps it up for volatile status conditions. Now we're gonna get to the good stuff, the non-volatile status conditions. These, as I said, are the ones that don't wear off after battle. If the battle ends, you will still be affected by them. The first one is Poison. Poison will deal 1/16 of the maximum HP of the Pokemon inflicted as damage every single turn. And outside of battle, it will actually deal 1 HP of damage every 4 steps you take. So you take 1, 2, 3, 4. On the 4th step, you're gonna take 1 HP of damage to every single Pokemon that is inflicted by poison. In Generation 5, it stopped doing that, so that's great. You just don't have to worry about it anymore. And it does not affect poison types. Poison will be healed by the item Antidote, or of course items that heal everything, because those items heal everything, like full heal and full restore. Next up is a variation of poison, we call it bad poison. The difference between poison and bad poison is that bad poison is cumulative. Every turn the damage will become bigger. Starting from 1/16 damage on the first turn, on the second turn it will deal 2/16, on the third turn it will deal 3/16, on the fourth turn it will deal 4/16, and so on and so forth. Which means that basically if your opponent doesn't heal, and of course you don't deal damage, on the 6th turn the Pokemon will always faint by bad poison. And if it does heal after the 8th or 9th turn, that should have accumulated enough damage to where the Pokemon can't heal that much. On the 8th turn you'll be dealing half the HP of damage of poison, so you know, it's ridiculous like that. But however, there is a glitch where if you switch out, bad poison becomes normal poison. Yeah, and that also happened in Generation 2. Generation 3 that stopped happening, but for Generations 1 and 2, bad poison becomes normal poison if you switch out. The only move that can inflict bad poison is Toxic. And just like poison, bad poison is healed by Antidote, and it also affects the outside of battle where you take 1 HP of damage every 4 steps. And when you get into a new battle, when you're inflicted by bad poison, it will also become normal poison. And once again, just like poison, it does not affect poison types. Next up we have Paralysis. Paralysis will first of all cut the speed of the Pokemon inflicted to 25% of its current value. So if you raise your speed to where right now it is 100, let's say, you have a level 20 Pikachu and you raise your speed to be 100. I don't know, that's possible, right? That's possible, yeah. If your Pikachu suddenly gets inflicted with Paralysis, instead of 100, his speed will be 25, which is not very fast. Yeah, a level 20 Pikachu with 25 speed is not very fast. Of course, a level 20 Pikachu with 100 speed is kind of ridiculous, but you get my point. 25% of your current speed. Not only that, but Paralysis also makes it so there is a 25% chance where the Pokemon inflicted by it will not be able to act. Just like Confusion, but you know, instead of hitting yourself, you just don't do anything. And instead of 50%, this one is 25%. Paralysis is healed by Paralysis Heal, of course, or Powerless Heal, because, you know, character limits. I just think that's funny. And one very particular thing about Paralysis is that the move has to work on your opponent. So if, for example, you want to use Thunder Wave to paralyze, you have to make sure that your opponent is not a ground type, because ground types are of course immune to electric type moves. And since Thunder Wave is an electric type move, that ground type opponent, will not be affected by Thunder Wave. Thunder Wave also can't paralyze electric types, so there's that. But other moves, like Stun Spore, do affect both ground and electric types, as well as bug types. So just remember that. The move itself has to work against the Pokemon, so it is kind of flimsy on that sense. But there are plenty of paralyzing moves, so you don't have to worry too much about it. Also, ground and electric types are not that common, so you're good with Thunder Wave, trust me. Next up we have Burn. Burn is pretty simple. Just like Paralysis, it will also cut the stat of a Pokemon by a certain amount. Burn will cut the attack stat in half. So if you have 36 attack, as long as you're inflicted by Burn, your attack will actually be 18. Math. Burn will also, just like Poison, deal 1/16 of your maximum HP as damage every single turn. So it's basically a mixture between Poison and Paralysis, but instead of cutting speed by 75%, it cuts attack by 50%. Burn also does not affect fire types, and it is healed, of course, by Burn Heal. Next up we have Sleep. Sleep will last anywhere from 1 to 7 turns. Pokemon inflicted with sleep can't do a thing, because of course, they're sleeping. Sleep is actually the only non-volatile status condition that ends after a certain amount of time. But waking up takes up a turn, but only in Generation 1. In Generation 2, you act the same turn you wake up. This means that if your opponent is fast enough and, of course, gets lucky enough with the accuracy, he can actually change sleep on you. So yeah, that's kinda bad. Now, the counter for sleep to wear off will reset if you switch out your Pokemon, so keep that in mind. If you stayed in battle for like 4 turns, and you are going to wake up on the next turn, then you switch out. The moment you send that Pokemon back in, the counter to waking up will start again from 1. You are not going to wake up on the very next turn. The counter does not save between switches. Sleep is healed, of course, by awakening, and it is one of the 2 non-volatile status conditions that increases the catch chance of a Pokemon by a lot. You can check out the video up there in the cards for more information on that. Next up we have Freeze. Freeze doesn't end, it lasts forever. The only way that you can get rid of Freeze is if you get hit by a fire type move or you heal with an item like Ice Heal, Full Heal or Full Restore. So what I recommend you do is that you always, absolutely always walk around with at least 3 Ice Heals in your pocket. At least 3. I like to be super safe, so I will always walk around with 10 as soon as I can buy them. When inflicted with Freeze, your Pokemon literally can't do a thing, because of course it's frozen in a block of ice. And if you can heal it, just let it go, because that Pokemon is as good as dead. DED, dead. Ice types are immune to Freeze, and just like Sleep, Freeze will increase the catch chance by a lot. Once again, more information up in the cards. This is great for catching wild Pokemon, you just have to be careful because the moves that do inflict Freeze also deal damage and they are very powerful. So maybe you will end up knocking out that Pokemon. And if you're trying to catch an Ice type, you can freeze that Pokemon because, well, Ice types are immune to Freeze, so you're gonna have to resort to like Sleep or some other status condition. And the last one, technically, it's a status condition, but it also isn't because, well, it's kind of complicated. The last one is Faint. Technically, it is a status condition because it can be healed by items, such as Revive, Max Revive, and Rare Candies. Those 3 items can revive a Pokemon from Faint. And Rare Candy is kind of funny because, you know, Rare Candy levels up a Pokemon, and when you level up you gain some HP, so that HP will actually count towards your active HP. So when you use a Rare Candy, you do level up, and then you gain some HP, and that brings a Pokemon back to life. That's just a little bit funny. And I think it still works up to Generation 7, so it's just something. Maybe it was like a glitch or something, but they just liked it so much that they decided to keep it in. Now, I don't think I need to say this, but anything that deals damage can inflict a Pokemon with Faint, because all that needs to happen is that that Pokemon's HP needs to hit 0, and the Pokemon is dead until you heal. The Pokemon can do a thing until you heal Faint. And if all 6 of your Pokemon faint, you're going to be teleported to the last Pokemon Center you healed at. And that is it for status conditions. Status conditions are key to battling. If you want to, of course, you can just spam Earthquake and just kill everything that comes around you. But status condition gives such a deep strategy level to battling that they are just too much fun to not use. So keep that in mind, make sure you build your team with some status conditions because they are great. And also always be prepared to deal with status conditions that are used against you, because that will happen.